Welcome back to the Holistic Game Developer's Guide to Unity. In this video, we're going to look at all of these windows and what they actually do. And I guess you could probably call them tabs as well. So your Unity might not have opened up looking like this. This is kind of the way that I have the tabs sorted in here. So it sort of travels with me. But your view might be completely different. Now, panic about that, because what you can do is just grab hold of any tab and just move things to wherever you want them, like that. You can even move them out of Unity, and if I take that completely off the screen and then I can bring it back in, you'll see it's a completely separate window. So the information that's in here I could put on a different monitor so that I can just see everything that's going on. So let me just dock that back where it was just there. That's how you can basically move them around. Now, if you lose a window, so say this game window that we accidentally close it like that, we just go up to Window and Panels and we'll find our game. In fact, no, we won't, because we just deleted it from that being on the screen. And let's see if we can find it under General. There it is, Game. Okay, so let's just click on that, and then we can drag and drop that back where it was. Now, usually I have it sitting next to my scene window there. There's my hierarchy. So each of these Windows tabs have a different purpose, and they all work together essentially to bring your project to life. Getting your head around what each of them do is very important so that you can navigate and add things to your project and change stuff and see it all together. The first one that we're going to look at is the scene window. The scene window is like your God view of the world design and the objects that are actually in the world, so that you can move them around. It's kind of like a 3D modeling tool, but you can't do any modeling, you're just moving it around in here. So for example, we will just add something so you can see that the difference here. We're going to come up to the Game Object menu option, 3D Object, and we'll go over to Cube. And once you've selected Cube, you'll see that you get a cube in the scene view. You also get another cube in the game view, and you get a cube called Cube in the hierarchy. Over in the inspector there's a cube, and if we have a look down in the assets, you actually won't see any change whatsoever. So what has actually happened now that you've added this cube? The cube that you've added is in Unity called a game object. Now I can use the scroll wheel on my mouse to actually move in and have a little closer look to it. We will go over the fundamentals of moving around in these spaces in the next video, but just for now you might want to zoom in so that you can see it a bit. You'll notice that if you zoom in and out in the scene view, it makes no difference to the game window here. The game window is what your game is going to look like from the perspective of the actual player. So this is what is going to appear on the screen. Currently, the camera that is in your scene, the game camera looking at your game, is kind of, sitting at the side, or from your point of view, you looking at the actual monitor. Under the free aspect, you can change it to, say, if it's going to be like a 4K display, then it would look like this on the screen. If it was going to be for TikTok, for example, it would then appear like this if you're making some kind of video for TikTok and displaying it on a mobile device. So usually, depending on what your game is for, you will set the aspect ratio for it over here so that you can see what it's going to look like on the final device. So that's basically what the game view is doing. And the game view itself is looking through the main camera. Over in the hierarchy tab is where you get a list of all of the things that are in your scene that is being displayed in the game window. So the camera, or the main camera for example, which is usually the perspective at which the player is viewing your game, if you double click on it in the hierarchy, it will locate where it is in the scene, and you can see that it's here looking towards the cube on that flat side of the cube just there, which is why you see it like this. There's also a directional light, which I can already see just there. If I double click on it, there's my directional light. It is lighting up this cube. It is over here coming from this direction going that way, so therefore that side of the cube is actually in shadow. There's a global volume. Now if I double click on that, you'll see that it sort of encompasses pretty much everything here. The global volume is about what rendering effects are put onto the game view here. Okay, so if you wanted to, change the colors somehow by adding post-processing functions to it, you could put it in here, and we will get to this much later on, so don't worry about the global volume just for now. Then finally in this hierarchy we have our cube, and if you double click on the cube it will find where it is in the scene. So there's the cube. Now the cube is a game object. It's not only like a 3D model, it also has a whole bunch of other attributes that come with it. All of the attributes for a certain object in your scene can be seen in the inspector window. So the cube, for example, when you click on it in the hierarchy in the inspector, it opens it up so you can actually see all the properties and things going on with that particular cube. Now this is a default Unity cube, and it comes with these properties here. First of all, it has a transform. Most things that are in your scene view, if not all of them, have a transform. The transform tells you the position of the object, how it's rotated, and also its scale. If we have a look at the main camera and click on that, you'll see that it is at a different position than the cube. You can tell by just having a look at the values here, even if it's not quite clear what they mean just yet. Next we have a mesh filter. The mesh filter is actually the model for the cube. Now I'm not sure I can see it in this particular window. If we double click on that cube, it's going to give you information about that model, which might not mean too much to you at this point. There's vertices, it has normal positions and all those sorts of things. It is just the definition of how to display that cube in 3D space. The model then has also a renderer put on it. If you want to see something in your scene, it has to have a renderer. If you untick that box there, you'll see that the cube disappears. It's gone from the game view. You can still see something of it over in the scene, so it still has a position. It just doesn't have any information about how it should be rendered or drawn, so therefore it just doesn't get drawn. But what about this green box that's now left? This green box is the collider, and if you come down underneath your renderer, you will see the box collider. A collider is something used by the physics system that will determine how your object interacts with other physics objects that are in the world. So it's usually the bounding box that's around an object that the physics will work on. Most of the time for any of these primitive default Unity objects, you will find that the collider is pretty much the same shape as the actual model itself. And if you turn your mesh renderer back on, you'll find that the box collider fits quite snugly around the mesh cube. Then finally, there is a material down the bottom here. So the material is used by the renderer to draw the cube and give it its color and many other properties that you will find when you start studying materials. In this case, it is blanked out or grayed out because you can't actually change it. It is a Unity default material, and therefore it won't let you edit it in here. Any of the values that aren't grayed out, you can actually play around with. So if you went up to the cube's X position here and move the mouse over the top of where it says X, you can actually click and drag and change the value in there, and you'll see that in the scene that cube is moving. You can also click in here and type a value in there. So if we want it to go back to 0 in the X, we would just type 0 in there like that. And you can do the same thing with rotation and scale. Now if we went back to the main camera, remember the main camera is the item that is displaying this view here. So if we were to put the mouse over its Z position and then click down and drag the mouse, you can see that you're moving the game camera, which is again the perspective of the player, and as you do, you'll see in the game window that you get closer and further away from that cube. Okay, enough about that, because we will get back to this transform stuff a little later. Last but not least, we have our project window down here that we've already kind of had a bit of a look at, but inside of the project window is the all-important asset folder, and the asset folder contains everything that you need to build your game. So it's not just the things that are in the scene. Anything in the scene will appear in the hierarchy, but everything inside of your game will be down in this assets. So I could add a whole bunch of animations and materials and sounds and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't mean they're in the scene, but they are then available to be placed into the scene. So this is kind of the repository of all of the stuff that is going to go into your game. So that's why it is in its own folder out in your actual folders, and you can see all of those objects in there. Now that's pretty much all of the main windows. As we progress through this course, you're going to find that we'll be introducing more and more windows down the track, such as this navigation window here, which is for AI agents and getting them moving around the screen. Again, not something to worry about right now. Okay, so in the next video, what we're going to do is come back and we're going to start practicing moving things around and moving the camera and stuff around in this scene, because being able to navigate yourself around in this window is quite a skill in itself, and can be the source of eternal frustration if you can't figure out how to position and move objects around in your game.